Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. I'm H.A. Conrad, here as always with my intrepid co-host Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Good day, HA. What's up?
Good day. We're on episode 107, and this episode, like all of our episodes, are brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build your own website. Our friends at Squarespace have given us a code, so if you would like to try it out, make your own website, you can put in the code ZOMBIE, not case sensitive, and they'll give you 10% off your first purchase. And thanks, as always, to Squarespace for your support. So today we are talking about a couple of little news tidbits, but then we're wrapping up through to the mid-season finale of Fear the Walking Dead Season 2. I will hold off on my comments until we get there, but so let's hop into the news. Not too much this week, but there's like a couple of news stories making the rounds about this woman that basically her daughter was, you know, sort of an extra or wanted to do like sort of like acting work on different film sets. And so they kind of went into it together, and she's ended up being basically a repeat zombie extra on a lot of different things. So she appeared in Zombieland, she's been on Walking Dead, and she pretty much now makes a living being an extra in all these things and going to conventions and things like that. And her name's Sonia Thompson. I just thought it was kind of cool, you know, and you know, kind of going out and doing this all the time, making a living at it. I think that's a lot of time to spend in a makeup chair, but if you have the guts for it, so to speak, I think that this is kind of a cool thing. And I think you should pursue this as your next career adventure, Stuart.
My question for this woman is, she talks about how she goes to conventions and like signs autographs. I'm like, who's gonna recognize her?
Apparently they do those. She's like a fan favorite.
There's gotta be ultra fans who are like, who know exactly what every repeat zombie extra looks like, but still.
Yeah, and I mean, she's going to Germany. She's big in Germany. It's
Just like the Beatles.
I like the fact that she's doing this, and it's sort of like her daughter's now moved on to the Netherlands for some reason, and she's just kind of doing her thing here. So good for her. I thought that was kind of cool. And in more interesting news, and as a follow up to an article and an experiment, I guess, that we talked about before, the doctors think tank, what would you call this? A company, I guess.
No idea what to call this.
I don't even know what terrifying is what I call it. But anyway, Ira Pastor, whose company, they announced their efforts to basically experiment and try to bring back brain dead patients with a combination of stem cells, electric stimulation, and other chemical compounds and things like that. And not surprisingly has experienced a lot of backlash from everybody. So I do think that there's some people, some families whose loved ones are in this state and are asking for assistance, but there's also a lot of ethical questions, as you would imagine, that go along with this. The article is highlighting a lot of those things. It's a little bit long to get through, but raises a lot of the questions and the things that we talked about when we raised this article. And, you know, basically it's that we just don't know what's going on. And so one of the things that I did not think about is that if you are making this like part of medical, I don't know, like normalcy, there's a lot of people that you should probably let go that are just going to be staying on life support like for, you know, eternity, basically, to see if you can experiment and bring them back. And he claims that there has been some success, though he says he can't, for confidentiality reasons, reveal this, which I think is a bit suspect. But anyway, I was curious to hear what your thoughts are on it.
I have very few thoughts on this, mostly. I feel like my position on this was let's go for it and see what happens, as I said a couple episodes ago when we first talked about it. Having looked at the picture of the hospital in India where this is going to be happening, in a town 140 miles away from New Delhi, it's wow. It just seems like, why aren't you doing this at like Johns Hopkins or somewhere?
Well, I think that there's a very clear answer to that. So
That this is like bad science?
there is absolutely no backing of any university, major hospital, or pharmaceutical company for this project. The money that they have raised have come from families, friends, angel investors. So that tells you a little bit. I mean, basically, ethicists are saying that this is absolutely a realm you should not be going into. So I think that there's just it's on pretty shaky ground. And part of what is bothering me a little bit about this, there is this whole idea about being brought back and people's expectations and like on all the hospital shows and the ER shows and things like that, you see them constantly bringing people back using like the paddles, like if they've had a heart attack and all that fun stuff. Like what they're not showing is that most people who are actually brought back have some bit of brain damage depending on how long things have been happening. It's actually the odds and the statistics are not in your favor generally. So, and depending on and a lot of the people who have to go through this are usually in a deteriorated state anyway. And so even then, when people are not brain dead, they come back and a lot of them have severe disabilities and things like that. So this is just taking it even a step further. So my thought is like, I don't know how much you're actually bringing back. And I don't, personally would not want to be in that position, but hey, I'm sure we'll hear some really exciting news from New Delhi or 145 miles outside of New Delhi pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hope it's not too exciting.
I hope not. Anyway, so are you ready to leap into these 3 episodes of season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead? Episodes 5 through 7 gets us through to the mid-season finale. And I'm just going to throw it all out there. This was really hard to watch, really slow to watch. A lot of, come on, I cannot believe you're doing this. A lot of, like, this is one of the worst things I think I've ever seen in terms of a television show.
Oh, come on, Z Nation. Way worse.
Way worse, but I mean, it was worse from the beginning. And
Yeah,
this,
expectations were lower for
I
that.
guess my expectations for this were a lot higher. And even some of the promising things that were going on, I think, went out the window. I feel like every single bit of sort of character development you've done with certain people just went out the window. This is just, and then I have to admit, I just truly, truly hate the bizarro, weird mysticism aspect that has popped into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Before we totally go down to the end, though, let's talk about them in order, shall we?
I suppose we shall.
Otherwise, we'll be done in 5 minutes. Unless you want to do a 5-minute podcast, I think the fans would be really would be cool with that.
Yeah. Anyway.
So episode 5 for this season was called Captive, and it picks up right after our happy band has recaptured the Abigail.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we've got Reed with a spike stuck through his chest, and we've got Daniel giving him medical attention but not removing the spike through him, because I guess he would probably bleed out if he did that.
Yep.
And Chris sitting there glowering at him. What else? Who else did we got? I guess it starts off with Alicia eating a steak, and having
her steak getting stolen from her.
Yeah, that woman is just so angry and weird.
She's really angry.
Not a lot of fun. And Connor, like, this is the most we see of him in the whole show, I think, because we have every reason to believe that he's done now, unless somebody cut off his arm really quick. Mm-hmm. He's just like, I feel like he got talked up quite a bit. Yeah, and then nothing. He's just like he's a good cook. Is what we get out of him. Good cult leader. You think of these guys as a cult? I mean, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about his band, his pirates. He's been a man of the sea. He worked on boats, because that comes across in the conversation. He talks about how his steaks were the thing that kept his crews feeling whatever, like, happy. and he's got his brother who's part of his merry gang, and then about 12 other people is what Reed says, but we never see that many.
Right.
What do you think of their whole, their MO, their reason for
I
being?
think it's completely stupid and unreasonable. I don't imagine that if you are trying to survive in this world that you're going to make this much of an effort to be pirates. And go out and risk the welfare of the people that you do have doing that. It doesn't make any sense to me, their little business model here.
What should they be doing instead, in your opinion?
My opinion is that they should be, certainly go out and forage and stuff like that, but using your resources to go out and track random boats, it seems just like a waste of energy to me. I feel like you should be trying to keep your, very similar to like the prison or something like that, just keep your people close, keep everybody safe. Like even them going out and bringing in Alicia just seems very strange to me. I kind of feel like the attention and energy wouldn't be there to be able to sort of launch an operation like this, and nor to keep it going and sustaining it. It just seems ridiculous to me.
It does raise a question for me, like whether or not it would be less dangerous to hunt humans or just, scavenge from the undead remnants of an abandoned America, which has probably got so much stuff still.
Right.
Like you can just
and
go.
instead you're making enemies? I don't know. It just seems stupid.
It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But
And not just that, but wasting fuel. Like, because think about the amount of fuel a boat uses.
and he's running
It's
a
a
generator
lot.
on that fishing boat in dry dock. So they're going through a lot of gas. But then there's going to be gas for a few months,
There will be, but if they're actually thinking long view, which is what they say they are doing, none of this adds up to me, and it just seems so ridiculous. But
Yeah, this is not a sustainable model for survival.
no, and I don't believe, it just does not sit right that Jack and Alicia's connection, that she would be brought into the fold as she was. It's something that it rings false, completely false to me.
Yeah, it's like same day as she's absconded, her boat is hijacked and she's brought back. They put her to work like IDing other targets to take.
Right, they trust her that quickly? Bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said last time we talked, even those two actors were like, "Yeah, there's no way this relationship was for real,"
Right.
Nobody believed that there was a connection between the two of them, even if the audience is led to think like Alicia's playing him, which I guess she is. At the same time, they want us to kind of tiptoe around this idea that maybe there's a connection there, and it doesn't make any sense. There's more stuff between the two of them, but it comes up after it's revealed that Alex is there, and she has told Connor and his gang how bad people our group of survivors are, just because of how that shit went down in the dinghy.
And again, I think you were totally correct when we talked about this last time. How did she get all the names in the backgrounds and have enough passion to sort of have a vendetta specifically
Against Travis?
Yeah, like of all people. That doesn't seem normal. The whole thing just...
She actually kind of explains it, her thought process here. She's like, you were as bad as the guy who cut the rope, or maybe he says that, but she's like, I saw your face. You knew the right thing to do, and you chose the other. And his thing to do was like he was picking a compromise that Strand and Maddie were going to probably accept. Like,
right.
I guess she's suggesting that he knew they were going to cut the rope. But of course, that's bullshit.
But again, I have to go back to this thing. Okay, so she's in the boat. He cuts the rope. She's there, and she's dealing with Jake, who's dying. And again, gets rescued by these people. Why would these people be any more trustworthy than anybody else? And I just, again, do not feel like anybody would have the energy to pursue such a vendetta. And especially specifically against Travis, to be like, okay, you guys got to go out and I'm going to tell you where this boat is. How would she even know where the boat was? And then be like, take this guy because I want to have my revenge. It does not seem plausible. And the writing and the writers, like, I don't know how they're even justifying any of this and thinking, hey, this would be a great idea. It just seems totally sloppy and weak to me.
one of the crazy things about this 3 episode series we're going to talk about is how many loose ends are left.
I know.
Because Alex actually just disappears. We don't. She disappears after she talks to Travis. She's like,
And we never
"Yeah,
see her again.
Connor said he was going to use me. People don't use me because I'm obviously like this cool character who just it does dumb shit sometimes apparently." And then she disappears. Um, but you know how they found the Abigail is with their radar, right? The thing that
No, I know.
changed.
And I know that this has been the whole thing is that and that was the whole thing with Jack and all of that. But again, like that was just a very strange
Yeah,
thing.
and I really have a hard time watching Travis, like Mr. Empathetic, getting dressed down by Alex, whose hair is really curly all of a sudden. Where did that happen? Very weird.
Humidity.
Also, how much time had passed? Like they put her in the dinghy. It's to us, it's the very next episode, and it maybe is that night that the hijackers row their dinghy up next to the Abigail and take it over. There's no For us, there's no measure of how much time has passed. But she talks about them running out of water, and we saw them put like a 2 or 3 gallon water jug in the boat with them, and
Right.
how she was on the edge of death when Connor found her. She talks like it's been a week.
I know,
Like
but it definitely has not been.
I mean, at least not that we're aware of.
Yeah, or that we
And
can
if the
tell.
show wants us to like be on board,
Then they need to
like
do something to show that, and they
we're gonna
didn't.
need a montage, you guys. Hit us up with a montage every so often if you want us to think time's passing, or like a freaking subtitle. Like a week later.
Yeah,
I'll accept that.
exactly.
I'm fine with that.
On Gilligan's Island. Oh, sorry.
Alicia persuades Jack to like run away with her,
Yeah, and all of a sudden he's totally Team Alicia.
and he's like, yeah, no worries. I'll abandon the people that I hang out with to go with you and the people that you want to be with. That's
Yep, I'm gonna totally give up all of this stuff, give up this security, even though I spent all this time trying to win you over and make you part of this group because it just doesn't add up again.
the stuff I did kind of like. I just like the character of Luis. I think he's funny and he's good character, and he's like persuading or talking to Strand about how they're doing dumb stuff and they shouldn't be going after
Yeah,
the family. And I was like, okay, Luis, yeah, I feel like you're talking a good game. But Maddie's on a mission, and she's just like, we're gonna sail this boat right into their harbor. And of course, the stupid thing with Chris and Reed has happened. This was one
right.
of many dumb things they do with his character. Like they just took his character and decided to just dip it in poop
Yep.
this season.
But there's another thing that was really bothering me, like the whole turnaround with Strand, where Strand is suddenly like Team Maddie,
And it's Mr. Sympathy, yeah.
is really weird to me. You would never have seen him do this. We
Well,
also,
yeah. She took his side though on the putting Alex and Jake in the dinghy.
she did
So I don't
but
know if maybe they just have somehow come to.
some
But yeah,
simpatico.
it does seem a little bit quick.
Yeah. And especially knowing that there's a time frame, he needs to get down to Mexico, but they're going to waste time. It doesn't seem likely to me, but okay, fine.
One thing
Give
that's
it
not
to
really
him.
clear to me was he shot?
Not clear, right?
Because he definitely reacted like he was shot when Reed shot at his dinghy. But then I don't see any bullet wounds. He seems to be moving around fine, and he has his shirt off in the mid-season finale. He doesn't have any bandages.
No wounds. Nope.
Anyway, weird. So apparently he was not shot. He just kind of ducked and then was floating in the water overnight.
I also think that the whole likelihood of this group leaving Chris alone anywhere with
Good
Reed
God.
is just, come on. Nobody is going to do that. We already know that Chris is just not quite right and not trustworthy. They
The
all
only-
know that. So
The
it's
only,
sort of,
the only lip service they pay to this is when Daniel says to him, "No wandering off," because that's like, I suppose, a reference to when he wandered away at the beach and beat a guy's skull in with a piece of metal.
right.
But it's like the way he's acting with Reed, like just sitting there staring at him with the weird knit brows.
Yes.
Daniel,
Daniel's
I
not
get
dumb.
but Daniel. They also just to kill Daniel's character, literally and
Yep.
figuratively, with his like descent into madness that just happens kind of like
Out of the
nowhere.
blue.
So maybe we're supposed to think that his judgment is impaired because yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he tells Chris, all right, don't don't go in there, don't engage. But yeah, I don't know. It's just super, super frustrating. Who even a little bit believes Chris that Reed was turning because he was quote unquote sick?
Yeah, that was strange. And and then of course the weird part is that Reed then does turn, even though he's been shot kind of in the head. I guess his brain wasn't, it was more just his jaw.
It's more of his mouth, yeah.
Right, just a little bit of a mouth hanging off of there. And you definitely see Maddie not really believing him and just kind of like placating the insane person. But again, wouldn't you give other people the heads up and tell all the other people to keep an eye on him because you're concerned about this behavior, not just keep that to yourself?
Well, she does tell Travis later, because that comes up in the next episode.
She tells him later, but she's leaving people alone on the boat with him. And if she's that worried about his mental state, I think at the very least she's going to tell others to keep an eye on him, and she doesn't. That we know of, anyway. And then there's all of her weird interactions with her son. Nick is like suddenly Mr. Hero, and she's like, I'm not going to let you go because you want to go. And, I kind of get it, but their interactions with each other are so melodramatic that it kind of made me just gag.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I feel that. I would, trying to put myself in the position of a parent with their kid suddenly being a little too at ease with the scenario. I can see why she would be upset and concerned about him, but I don't know how I would act in that scenario. It's crazy. Like, the thing is, though, he is an adult, but he's an adult with a history of making terrible, terrible judgment calls.
Right. So, and then also this is the episode and the moment when Reed comes back to life and scares Ophelia, and Daniel is basically like now suddenly starts hearing voices.
Well, this is like other than that part, this is like the best part of this episode where they have this, they had come up with this plan to still do the hostage exchange even though he's turned. It's kind of the ideal use of a zombie in many respects, except
they make that noise, that weird
and
noise.
I was like, oh, he must be gagged when she's actually on the dock, but no, he wasn't even gagged so he was just sitting there like being all docile, which is a little odd. But when you do sensory deprivation on a zombie, they supposedly
calm down.
Maybe, I don't know. That's a stretch. He's definitely twitching around a lot when they first put him in the dinghy in the Zodiac with her. But it's I like the hostage exchange scene. It's a little weird that Connor, it's on his territory. She goes by herself. And he supposedly has 12 people. Although again, we don't at least see a few of them. We only see 2 guys with him in this exchange. Why he wouldn't just be like, okay, now I'm going to kill you all?
Right, doesn't make sense.
But it doesn't even seem like anybody's armed. His brother takes a chunk out of his arm and then rips out the throat of another guy because
he's really fast, I guess.
Very slow to react. And then the third bad guy gets headbutted by Travis, and then they have a scuffle.
Yep.
I don't remember how that one ended, but probably not well for Connor's gang because Maddie and Travis get away.
Right. Alicia, is separated, so she's like, I don't know, then has a tussle with the pregnant woman. I mean, locks her up, which is good. And then just basically tells Jack, hey, I'm going back with my family. And he's like, why would you go with them? Like, the whole thing is just crazy.
Why would you?
Who
asks that?
Because didn't they just decide that they were going to go together? I don't know. Maybe they were both playing each other, but that whole interaction was weird. So she manages to jump off the boat, and they rescue her with their little dinghy.
Right, though they had been both plotting to escape from Connor's gang to rejoin her family. And then her family comes to her, and she says, I'm going. Right. And he's like, no, they're bad.
Right.
Well, so yeah, that episode ends with her jumping off the back of a boat. Did you see the behind the scenes of how they did that?
No, I didn't.
She actually, her stunt double didn't jump off the back of the boat into water. She jumps off the back of the boat into a pile of cardboard boxes,
Huh.
which makes me wonder if that's like the budget version of the big
Maybe.
balloon mattress that I feel like they used to use, or maybe those things aren't as safe as I thought. So yeah, she jumps off into some cardboard boxes, and then they transition into the water.
Hmm.
And then that's Captive, and that was directed by Carl Zisk and written by Carla Ching, or vice versa. It had an audience of 4.41 million.
Yep.
Getting down there in the old audience department.
Yep. And then next up, how do you say this?
Sicut Servus.
And this
I'm
is a
gonna
Kate Dennis, Brian Buckner creation. And this, this starts out with the odd church scene, which I thought at first might be a flashback.
This scene reminded me of a B movie zombie
Yeah, it was really strange. I
genre.
wasn't sure what to think of this, but it's like a priest and his parishioners, and they're all talking about the things and the trials and tribulations that are happening. Um, and then we see Strand's lover, Thomas Abigail, coming in and trying to convince them not to do what they're going to do. Like they're all taking up arms, and you don't really necessarily know for what purpose, other than to maybe kill walkers. That's not clear. And then they all start bleeding out their eyes and tell him that Celia is responsible.
We haven't even met Celia yet, so or I guess we kind
Well,
of
we
have
saw
a
her in a
flashback.
flashback.
But yeah, so Tom Abigail shows up at the church to persuade them not to attack his house
Right.
because the people who work for him are better armed and ready and waiting for them. So it's clear that they're not attacking him because they call him a good man.
Right.
They're like their mission is to go and kill Celia. It seems like
Yep.
because I assume they are. He doesn't really say it outright in his sermon, but I'm assuming it's because she's keeping dead people in her basement,
Right. So
and or
she
because
she
she's doing
is
stuff like what she does to them and killing a bunch of people.
right, which is taking a step further than Herschel. So
Yeah,
it's her own odd spiritual version of things, but it's akin to what Herschel was doing, although Herschel was not deliberately turning people clearly. So, um, you know, I can understand why they might take up arms against that. Um,
why is Tom Abigail? I don't really understand why he's cool with her.
I don't either. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that he's allying himself with her, except that we then, and this is, this was very sad for me because we go back to the boat at this point, where Strand and Luis are negotiating with Mexican military for safe passage, which is also kind of weird. But Luis ends up being injured
Well,
and
fatally, I'm
says
pretty sure.
fatally and keeps saying, "Don't shoot me in the head." And my only thought is that maybe Tom Abigail is buying into Celia's idea that these walkers are not dead, that this is the afterlife or something weird like that, because Luis seems pretty convinced of it and pulls out this magic weird little Pirates of the Caribbean coin for some reason
Hmm.
that Daniel just tosses off the boat.
Yeah,
So
I wish
there's
they'd kind of explain more about that, or have
yeah,
one line where Daniel's like, "That looks like superstitious nonsense," or it's pagan or something.
right.
They don't even. They
They
just kind of
don't
let
tell
it
you.
go.
He just tosses off the boat. So something's going on there. So my only thought is maybe Tom has bought into to what Celia is selling, which is a lot of mysticism and spiritualism.
Maybe.
And maybe if you think about it in the way that this is the way that they are making sense of this world, I guess. But it still is again very far fetched to me.
There's a scene in at the beginning of this episode where Tom clearly looks at his truck, or they show him look over his shoulder. There's a close up of his truck, and then he looks back at all the parishioners who are dying, and he seems to clearly make the decision to stay with them instead of. I'm assuming that's what that shot was wanting us to think about. Like, is he gonna just go now and save himself, or hang out with all these people who are dying and are gonna turn?
Right.
So it might be like he basically stayed there on purpose.
Yeah. And I think that that's it, though it did take me a minute to realize exactly why he was looking at the truck.
I'm like, why
But
are we just looking at his truck? It's not moving. What's going
right.
on?
I didn't know if somebody else was in there, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
right. Anyway,
Um,
yeah. So, but yeah, that's just frustrating. Any of these episodes where people are like willingly getting bitten by zombies, I'm just like, you are. This is very frustrating for me as an
yeah.
audience member. However, so yeah, the trade goes very badly. Although we also have Travis and Chris having a conversation about um, Travis is telling Chris that Madison is concerned about him
Yeah, and
based on the fact that he
Chris suddenly
shot.
is like, she's the worst. He's really angry now. You don't want to make him angry.
And one of the things that sticks out to me in this conversation with Travis is he's like, "Why are they looking at me like that? Like I'm a bad person? Like you shot a guy in the face who was tied up." So
Right.
I don't know if we really need to go into the details of why that was bad, but okay. Uh,
Yeah. Um. So, yeah.
in
And then,
the Talking Dead, let me just quickly go to. There was an interview with the dude Lorenzo. I forget his last name. He gives a behind the scenes reason for why he shot Reed in the face, and it was apparently because Reed started talking shit about his mom.
mm,
That was, I guess, that was like something he went and talked to the director of the episode about to get his motivation figured out.
okay.
Just so you know.
Still dumb.
Yeah. Well, the dumbest thing was him being left alone there,
Right.
obviously, and having a gun ever.
So then we segue into the group suddenly being on land all together
Very, very
very
suddenly. Right?
quickly.
Inland too.
And immediately they come across the whole group of parishioners. There's some kids in there. We've got Daniel with his crazy voices in his head.
Lots of kids, really.
Lots of kids. Nick takes out a little girl, no problem really. But then there is this like big scene which leads to other things where Madison is in danger and Chris just is going to stand there and let her be eaten basically. And
It's not even like he was standing still. He was running towards her and then realized and then stops.
Yep. And then
So
Alicia sees all this and is clearly upset by it and takes care of business in a pretty badass way. She knives the walker in the head. And
yeah. This was actually this whole setup, this whole scene was very convenient because they walk up and all these weapons are lying around on the floor too, right?
well, I guess they're from left over from when the parishioners were going out, right?
I know they were, but still. Like not only they walk up, it's totally quiet. There's just some dogs eating the dead bodies. They and then suddenly they're surrounded by
Yeah.
zombies.
Similar to
And
being on the beach though with the airline crash, like that happened pretty quickly too.
yeah, true. Anyway, it was kind of, and it seems that Tom Abigail walked home from the church after getting bitten instead of taking his truck because his truck's right there
Yep.
conveniently.
Why he
So
would do
great
that. And I
stuff.
mean, and Strand is really upset and is like, Tom. And then they run off to the compound and are welcomed in. And it's immediately like, or they drive to the compound and it's like, it's a little too convenient that the truck's there. And I mean, with all the sort of light and happy music and sunshine, and you
yeah.
know that this is not going to go well or that they're not going to where they think they're going. It's just it's just clear. There's just tons of foreboding going on.
I had my hopes up. I'm not as cynical as you, HJ. I was like, oh, this is great. They've got walls. They've got crops. There's apparently a whole bunch of people
got
working
wine.
in the fields. Yeah, and they've got vineyards. But then clearly it's something's not right with Celia. Like, hey, welcome. She's like Fantasy Island a little bit about it.
It's totally Fantasy Island, and she's like, have some pozole.
Yeah, and they have to give up their weapons, which is never a good sign.
No, no.
How do these guys already have that stuff all figured out? They seem to be living in like a la la land anyway. Yeah.
And you definitely got like hints of the sanctuary, and you know, the terminus. I mean, like
Yeah,
I did.
slightly. Yeah.
And then Strand discovers that Tom has been bitten, is very upset, clearly. Him and Madison have these weird moments of, solidarity where, Tom is telling her that she needs to take care of Strand. And again, I'm finding their companionship to be a little weird. But
I like some of the jokes. He's like, Madison, you're always an inconvenient guest,
Yep.
or like, or whatever he calls her. I
No,
think
and I think
it's they've got some nice rapport going,
they do.
but more disturbing is that Nick and Celia apparently have just formed this immediate connection,
It's
and he's just
immediate and weird.
yeah,
It's
he's just
like,
eating up her pozole and her insane voodoo
yep,
at the same time.
yep. And there's a little place to do their little voodoo thing in the
And
backyard.
when he goes out there with Ophelia, instead of it being like a touching moment between Nick and Ophelia, it's like just Nick having a
Flashback,
crazy magical flashback,
a little bit of a dream,
just because he's looking at the
trance.
owl in the tree and freaking
Yeah,
out. So they're kind of like cementing either the fact that this place is magic, in which case this is a whole different kind of show,
right.
or this is just the beginning of everybody on the cast except for a couple going
Going
insane.
crazy. Yeah.
And that's basically what happens in the next
Right.
episode.
And I mean, we have a bit of Daniel by this wonderful little voodoo thing with Celia.
Yep.
He's calling her out on certain things. She keeps saying many things during this episode, like, the dead are all around us. We can just see them now. And says, like, similar mystical things to many different people.
Hmm.
And it's just, if they're going there, I just really hope they don't. Daniel says a lot of things about the ground being poisoned and evil.
That
And
starts up more in the next in the final episode, but in this one we definitely have him. He starts having more of those flashbacks.
right, right.
Uh,
And then, like, we're seeing a lot of Strand just helping Tom to die or being with Tom while he's dying.
yeah, and
Um,
this it's touching. Those
it
scenes are
is.
pretty touching. It's like you can definitely feel. I think it's a good performance by Coleman Domingo, where he's just like he seems so at a loss of what to do
Yeah.
because his friend, his lover, or whatever, is dying. And so I was feeling for that one. And
I was
the,
too, and I thought their interactions, like, I did believe that he would do anything to come and meet up with him. You know what I mean? Like that, I did not doubt. Like, I thought that their acting was fantastic.
hmm
And but what I didn't really believe is the weird interactions between Maddie and Travis about
and
discussions over Chris.
yeah, and Nick and Alicia, or Chris and Alicia.
Yeah,
The thing is, I can understand they're torn, right? This is like when the Brady Bunch gets really fucked up, and like one of the Brady kids tries to kill the other Brady kid. Which way are the Brady's gonna go on that? So I could feel it. It's just insane that they were deciding to do this with Chris's character.
yeah,
Like I don't know why they decided that they're just gonna throw it all away. But yeah,
yeah.
so Travis and Maddie are not going to be on the same side in this conversation. He's going to be. I can understand that he would be completely unwilling to believe that his son would be a trying to passively get Maddie killed and b overtly threatening to hurt Alicia. I can understand that he would be in disbelief of that. And as an audience member, I was kind of in disbelief of it too because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. And I mean, I guess I could see them having the conversation and him being somewhat disbelieving, but I do think that he would listen to her if she's saying that Chris needs help. And part of why I think he would have listened to her is exactly for the reasons that he throws back at her, which is that he was always there for Nick.
Yeah, which we saw in the first season. He's like going
And
off into that church by himself.
right, and he knows what it's like to go out and go after somebody that's maybe having for whatever reason having a hard time. So I feel like he would have believed her, and when she's telling him what Alicia said, and just telling him, like, look, things are not going well here, we need to help him, and him just being like, okay, yeah, we need to help him, but it's not clear what either of them are meaning by that. Like, what does she mean?
Yeah, because
Like,
what
we
they end up doing is probably the right answer in a way. It's just
yeah,
that they seem to come to that conclusion out of anger instead of like, okay, here's what we're gonna do as a team.
right,
They instead say, well, screw you, my daughter needs me tonight, or I'm. They again revisit the subject of I need you with me on this, and so
right.
they use that language. It's actually pretty good thematically, I guess, if they're gonna. The writers are thinking about like the theme of their relationship, and Maddie says, "Well, my daughter needs me with her tonight." And
Yep,
he's like, "Okay, be with her. I'll
I'll be
be
with
with
Chris.
Chris." Sure, okay. But then, of course, they're not the best watchdogs, as it
No,
turns
clearly
out.
not. Clearly
As it
not.
turns out, Strand decides not to kill himself, and it shoots what's his face in the face. We also discover that Celia is keeping a whole bunch of people in the basement, or actually in the barrel room.
Yep. So
And they
it's very Herschel's barn, and even the discovery is very Herschel's barn.
yeah,
Where Daniel sees
watching
what's
the
going on.
animals. Yeah, yeah, getting
They keep throwing like dogs in there. It's like,
like a
oh
puppy.
God,
Yeah, it's not nice.
no. And she keeps going on with her mumbo jumbo. They're all around us, Stuart.
So that's that episode, and that was just kind of a drag, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but then the last part is that, so there's an interesting scene between Strand and Celia where she's like, "Oh, now that you're going to kill yourself with my son, I think you're okay, and I didn't like you before, but now you're worthy of him." And Strand ultimately makes the decision to give what I think he thinks is give Tom mercy, and shoots him in the head. And as he's doing that, there's like the whole weird scene where Chris is holding a knife over Maddie.
Yeah,
Which is
of
weird.
course. It's like the show couldn't make up its mind, or it wants us to all be like, "Oh, what's he doing in there? Is it just innocent?" So he first goes to the door and says, "Alicia, Alicia," and she doesn't wake up. So then he walks in and
Right.
picks up the knife that's on Maddie's bedside table,
And
and
stands
then
over
is
them in a
just
weird
standing
way.
there when the gunshot goes off.
Right.
And he
And
has his reactions are just really weird.
yep.
There's no explanation for what he's doing.
No, and then of course he runs off and they're like, "Get out." And yeah, so there's that. Which leads us into the next episode.
Which picks right up.
Right. So of course Celia's pretty upset that Tom has been killed, and Strand is now the devil to her, and she says they all have to get out. And then Chris has taken a runner, and Travis, of course, is going to go after him.
With no shoes on.
No shoes. And we're seeing a lot of interesting interactions. I mean, Nick tries to reason with Celia to no avail. Daniel is hearing lots of voices now. Like it's just pretty much constant from what we see from this point forward.
And he's appearing more disheveled and kind of pathetic and old man like instead of like this, battle
Powerful
hardened
and
torturer. They've just completely unmanned him in the last two episodes.
Right.
There's a scene where he's like sharpening that piece of metal while he watches Strand dig the grave, and he's looking around and all the people are watching him, and yeah, it's really hard to figure out where he is in his headspace. And the scene where he goes up to Strand and tries to actually Strand has a really hard time digging this grave. Like everybody wants to talk to Strand while he's digging the grave.
Yeah, they're all interrupting.
And because Maddie comes up and is like, "What about Nick?" And Daniel's like, "Don't bury him. He'll come back as a ghost."
Mm-hmm.
And Strand has to be like, "Are you okay?
Yep.
What's going on in your head, Daniel? You don't seem right."
Yep.
Because he's not.
No, he is not.
But he's not the only one who's not all right in the head, because Chris is completely insane. Nick is going completely insane, as far as I can tell. Like Nick, the character that I like the most this season, it basically made him now.
He's now off the rails.
Yeah.
So he plays his little. He really is enjoying covering himself with guts these days.
He does it twice in one episode.
I know. So he does it to bring Louise back and I understand why he does that. He knows that if he can do this, it's basically a peace offering to Celia. And so he does that, but it's not clear whether he's doing it just as a peace offering or whether he actually believes her mysticism. There is clearly a bond between them, and he's rejecting a lot of Maddie's thoughts about these things. And basically is kind of like, this is my world now. I can walk among them. I'm not going to die. And like, he's kind of gone around the bend.
Yeah, well, when you say stuff like, I was there and I felt that I wasn't going to die, not there, not that way, I'm like, okay, now you're crazy. You've lost like the survival stuff that we were all
excited about,
pretty happy with you having, and you've gone ritualistic on it.
Right.
Yeah, it's dumb.
And then Celia just talks more and more about like why she's keeping all the people there, and that Luis isn't dead, and just basically keeps spouting out this nonsense.
Her explanation that they are basically the afterlife, that zombies are what comes next, as she describes it to Nick, is should be a real alarm bell for him. And especially when she says, "This isn't the end times. This is the new beginning for all of us," and he hears that and
Understand
doesn't
where she's
freak out.
going.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Um,
so yeah, you've got that, and despite his talks with Maddie, he does say that he's going to go off and find Travis and Chris for her. But not clear, like, because Maddie's basically like, we gotta get out of here, and Nick's like, we're not leaving, we're home. So
yeah. Daniel gets himself locked up because he tries to take Ophelia out the front gate to meet her mom, who's dead, who, as we know, who died in season one. So he's gone completely loony.
yep, and attacks
Uh,
people on the compound, so they lock him up.
so they lock him up. Travis is gone. Maddie's basically operating by herself because Strand is in ditch or grave digging purgatory. Daniel's insane. Who she got? She got Alicia, and then she comes out at one point, and it's like Nick and Alicia are just kind of chilling in some chairs on the porch. And I'm like, why isn't everybody freaking out more?
Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
know.
after the stuff that's been going on, I don't know.
Oh, right. And I should also mention that, like, at this point, Celia's like, oh, you brought Louise back. The family can stay, but Strand still leaves. And there's just all this dramatic crap going on about that.
And Maddie's got the right reaction where she's, even though Nick has like, this I guess it's before Nick has secured Luis and secured their stay. She doesn't want to stay there.
No,
She thinks that
'cause
Celia's crazy,
right.
or at least that her bond to Thomas Abigail and therefore her responsibility to
To them
them
is over.
is
Yeah,
over, and that totally makes sense.
it does. And then we hit the really just ridiculous. I don't know. I just this part anything to do with Chris now. I'm just like whatever. And Travis has run his feet bloody. He ends up at this random house because out of all the random houses in that place, this is where apparently he's going to end up okay. And there's this guy there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for my son," and "Oh, my feet hurt," and his feet are bloody, and they show a big, nice close-up shot of that.
Mm.
And then basically Travis discovers that Chris is there holding the man's son hostage, and
Which is just
weird and stupid.
beyond
Like
insane.
why? Like I don't know. Like I feel like if Chris is that much around the bend, he's not taking hostages at that point. He's just going to go off wild into the into the bush basically. I don't think he like. Why did he end up at this house? Why did he end up? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Why didn't he go hide in an empty house instead of a house with
Right.
people in it, for
Right.
instance? And when did they get outside the compound? Like, was there a wall that somebody climbed over? Because
I
isn't
don't
this
know.
place supposed to be surrounded by a wall? And then this
Yeah.
comes back again later when suddenly Strand shows up in the truck and picks everybody up again. I'm like, wait, you got kicked out of the compound. How are you back in there? Or are they
Right.
not in there? I don't know. It's like, doesn't make
The
any
whole
sense.
thing is very confusing.
And
and
there's
again-
suddenly zombies everywhere, like inside what I assume is inside the walls, but maybe they're outside. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, and they're all over the place. And then you've got Daniel hearing the voice of his wife, and apparently the voice of himself because he's his own first victim, and basically telling him what he needs to do. And there's this whole dramatic scene where he goes to where Celia is. Well, I guess we should also point out Madison's thing before we talk about that.
That was pretty good. It's a little silly that Celia doesn't see it coming,
Yeah.
but it was pretty good. Like Matt, and I like the line, "What would you not do for your children? Nothing. I would." Well, yeah. Is there anything you wouldn't do for your children? No, there's absolutely nothing I wouldn't do for them. And then she
Locks
Celia in there, and
the
to her
walkers.
credit, after all the rhetoric, Celia doesn't look terrified. She's like resigned
Okay.
to getting eaten by the zombies.
Yep.
However, we never see her die.
Nope.
And then when
And we
Daniel
don't
goes
see
back
her
in
among
there,
the walkers.
yeah, when Daniel goes back in there, granted, the walkers that are actually there turn into some other things that he's seeing in his head.
Right.
So we don't get a good look at him.
No, but we see his.
They're still over in that one side of the room where they were when Celia got locked in there. It's not like, unless she
Well-
wandered over there and got eaten.
Yeah,
do
but
seem to
also,
still
you know what? She knows that place inside and out. I guarantee you there's some secret passage out of there.
Maybe. But it's the thing that's most important to take away from this is a barrel room. They are in
Yep.
a room full of liquid. They're in a room full of wine in barrels, like
Mm-hmm.
lots and lots of barrels of wine. It's got tile floor. It might have, I don't remember what the walls and ceiling are made out of, but what I'm getting at is not super flammable.
Yeah, and not flammable in like 5 seconds, which is how quickly this appears to spread.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
he does have
Tiny thing of gas, like a gallon of gasoline.
gas, and I think that there's some implication that there might be flammable things in there, but still not enough to take out the entire compound, which is what happens.
Yeah. I don't think it's even enough to burn that room.
No.
Like what he doesn't pour it on any wood. He pours it on tile.
Yeah,
Like
it's
gas
very
doesn't burn
strange.
forever. It's just gonna burn until
Burn
there's
up.
no more gas there.
Yeah,
And why should we think that these fresh zombies are gonna burn? Like they're juicy.
right. And unlike finales that we saw with the prison or with Terminus, things that just kind of made sense, all of this is so disjointed, and it's so strange to me that these could be from like the same universe, like the same writing universe. I know that it's like a different team, but you would think that there would be some consistency, and there just isn't, and it just was really troubling.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing, the thing with Strand coming in with the truck and kind of saving the day, and then I don't know, it just was weird. And I'm, like we should mention that Nick has found Travis and Chris, and Travis says, "Tell her that you didn't find me."
Well,
And
we also they have the whole fight with between Travis and Chris,
it's so
where
dumb, and you don't get anywhere.
First he points a gun at his dad, and then his dad disarms him of the gun. He runs away. Then his dad runs outside, tackles him, and then he pulls a knife out of Travis's belt and tries to cut him a couple of
Hmm.
times. And then Travis disarms him again, and then he's like, "Wow, I'm a bad dad." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, a bad dad would have killed that kid
Yep.
because that kid is nuts, and he tried to kill you twice, or
Yep.
at least he threatened your life twice."
And your wife, and like
Yeah, and
he's just
your stepdaughter.
yep. Um,
It's too much.
yeah.
And Chris is like, "Oh, I'm no good. Let me go. I'm no good." I'm like, "Oh, Jesus, come on, man."
Yep. And so when Nick finds them, Travis is like, I have to stay with him and be a good dad. And Nick's like, all right, man, I'll see you later. Like, Nick tries to talk him out of it a little bit, but not really. And then heads back to the compound where he's very upset to find that everything's burning. And
Yeah, like the whole compound is on
yeah,
fire.
yeah. And then has a confrontation with Madison and basically is like, I'm going to stay. And he's doing his little zombie camouflage thing again.
Celia,
And
he's like, Celia was right. We destroy everything we come in contact with, or something.
right. Okay.
It's a little hard to believe that too.
And so we basically leave with just Strand, Maddie,
And
and
Ophelia, and
Ophelia,
Alicia.
and Alicia going back to the boat, and that's it. Because
And
Travis
that's
and Chris are
yeah,
MIA. Nick's gonna stay by the compound, I guess.
with his zombie friends.
And
And
Daniel's dead.
there's like a posse of angry compound
Villagers.
residents wandering around yelling instead of putting out fires. They're like, "Let's get our guns and wander out into the vineyard."
Yeah, because, this whole place is burning and all of our food and resources are going away, so we're going to focus instead on the people. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a very disappointing first half of season two. It was. I'm trying to think of the one episode that I really enjoyed, but there wasn't a single one. It was. I
Mm-mm.
liked characters like Luis. I kind of liked the Geary family until they went crazy with their suicide stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I didn't like Jack. Connor's gang seemed wishy-washy. Alex kind of disappointed me.
Yep.
Yeah, so but
No.
the loose ends, we've got Alex is still out there in the wind. We never see Celia die. We don't see
Celia's
Daniel
got to
die,
still be out there. I don't.
right?
I don't know that
Because Daniel
Daniel.
leaves the gate open. He leaves the gate open after he goes into the barrel room. I mean, he
I
lights
mean,
everything on fire, but the door's open.
but I think Daniel wants to die, so I think that he probably did. But we don't see it
Yeah,
happen.
but we don't see it happen.
So you're
And the
right.
show isn't. I mean, the franchise at least isn't big on off-screen deaths for main characters.
True, true. Um, but yeah, it like I will definitely review the second half of this, but it's just so weak and poorly. To me, it's just like a very poor production overall.
It's the production I think is fine. I think the special effects are slightly cheaper than the main show. The cast is strong. Their performances are good. It's just I think the script and the
The script
storyline,
is
the
terrible.
plot is kind of dumb. But otherwise they've got everything they need. They just need to find writers, maybe bring Kirkman in to write more of it, or take a firmer hand on the storyline. But
Or bring in a
it's just
showrunner who understands. Like, this is like, it kind of feels like, and I know this sounds terrible, but it kind of feels like they took their B writers or people and they're like, hey, let's see what you can do. It feels like
yeah.
they're cutting their teeth in a really horrible way on this, and it's disappointing and it's kind of stupid. It could be a lot better than this. I feel like there's so many other directions this could have gone in that would be better, and I don't think it would have taken that much to make this better.
This got picked up already for a season 3, didn't it?
It did, and shockingly, it looks like the viewership did go up slightly, although it's holding pretty steady at like 4.5 million. It's
Yeah.
still
Well,
not
the
anything to sneeze at, but
yeah mid-season finale ended up at 4.39, which might even be like the series low.
right.
So there we go. Yeah, as you've said, our cast is kind of split up. I am excited. I would be on paper excited about a zombie survival show starring Maddie and Strand. Alicia, not so much. Ophelia, she's like an empty suit. Nobody knows what she's about. But Strand and Maddie are two good characters, and they have at least been written consistently. Except Strand has gotten nicer, and Maddie's pretty much stayed the same. She's like a tough, no nonsense guidance counselor from high school.
It is the show now, but I mean, I'll continue to trash the rest of the show with you, but I just don't have a ton of hope at this point. All right, well, that wraps up the first half of season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead. We're going to take a little bit of a departure, though tangentially related. I'm going to try to conquer my issues with perhaps demonic children and possession, demons, whatever you would have it. So we're going to try to review the first episode of Outcast next week, which is the new Kirkman creation. But if you have any thoughts about Fear the Walking Dead Season 2, if you don't agree with us, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear some positive reinforcement here, and maybe somebody's catching something that I'm missing or we're missing. But if that is the case, please drop us a line at Reanimated PCast on Twitter or reanimatedpodcast.com. Or you can send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Anything else to add, Stuart?
No, I hope that this wasn't too negative. And like you said, I would really like to hear if anybody else was like really feeling it. Clearly, by the end of the season, we're just kind of like not on board with a lot of their decisions. But hey, we can only go up from here, right?
Right.
Okay.
But until next time, have a great rest of the week, whatever, whenever we get this up. And see you next time. Ciao.
Bye bye.